obviously, the history, and it's gone from one of the worst countries in the world to, I think it just surpassed Canada. Canada's going the wrong direction, so it's kind of a low-hanging bar now with Canada. But no, it's Canada used to be considered one of the safest countries in the world, and now Salvador is more safe as far as the stats come out and juggle a little bit, but it's in the same, it's in the same ballpark, and that's a radical thing. And you can feel it, right? You know it. You walk down the street here, you can be on your phone or whatever. Nobody's going to snatch it out of your hand and that sort of thing.
Patrick, third time's a charm. We actually are getting to sit down this time.
In the same place.
We've tried to do this like 3 different times, and
at least, yeah.
We just got to hanging out and talking and had too much fun, and it got too late, so we never actually got a podcast done. So excited to get down in here and hear what you guys have cooking. Not just in Panama, but it sounds like pretty much all over Latin America.
Yeah, and hopefully here in El Salvador soon too.
It's the place to be. I mean, you can't be a builder in Latin America and not be in El Salvador,
or a Bitcoiner and not be in El Salvador.
Exactly. So I know you've spoken at I think a couple of the conferences here in El Salvador over the years, so you're definitely familiar with El Salvador. But would love for you to give people a little bit of background information. I know you came out of the tech world. I think you retired at some point and then decided that you wanted a lot of headaches and extra work, so you'd be a developer in Latin America. So.
Exactly. You pretty much covered it there, I think. So. Yeah, so my name's Patrick Hiebert. I'm originally Canadian. I lived down in Central America, Latin America for almost 15, 20 years now. I've been doing development, but our company is called Autris, and it's publicly traded in the U.S. under AUTR is the stock symbol if somebody wants to look it up or invest in it. And we create Veritas Villages, which are around different countries down here, and we're continually expanding. And they are basically based on what we created, this first certification or first philosophy, FIRST, stands for freedom, independence, resiliency, sustainability, and transparency. A lot of words, but I think people can kind of resonate with that idea, the freedom-oriented communities that we build, residential communities with amenities and everything in them, but they're based around freedom, kind of Bitcoin Citadels. Bitcoin plays a big part in it. We on the freedom side of that moniker, we also believe a lot in financial freedom, and obviously Bitcoin stands light years ahead of fiat and that. So in all of our communities, you can buy your home and property with Bitcoin. All the commercial businesses within the communities have to accept Bitcoin. They can accept the local currencies or US dollars as well, but Bitcoin's a requirement. We're a freedom-oriented community, so we don't have very many requirements, but that's one of them. And, I think as far as I know, we're probably one, if not the only group that's mining Bitcoin with extra solar power. All our communities are 100% off-grid. People think of off-grid and they think like I'm a cabin or a yurt in the woods or something, but these are luxury homes, and but totally off-grid, totally self-powered with solar and wind. We have our own water always on site. We have community orchards and gardens, stables, livestock, chickens and all this sort of stuff, tilapia pond in some of them, and different things like that. The idea is they really became popular. The whole concept, we've been doing almost 20 years, we've been building communities, but they really didn't become the freedom kind of Bitcoin-centric communities until COVID hit. And that really woke a lot of people up to, kind of what the authoritarian governments that they might be living under than not really knowing it. And that, same happened for me. It was an evolution. Creating these communities didn't start, when Bitcoin started, that we were thinking, oh, these are 100% Bitcoin communities and freedom oriented. It just became more necessary over time. And I was in the software business in Canada. I'm originally Canadian, now living down in this part of the world. But
You say originally Canadian. Have you renounced your citizenship?
I am not a
or
resident
you-
of Canada anymore.
Okay, not a
No.
resident.
So
Okay,
the
I guess you
beauty,
guys have a little bit different system
yeah,
than the
we
U.S.
have one advantage, I'd say, in the world that over the Americans, and that would be the only one probably. But we can renounce our residency and keep our citizenship. So I have my Canadian passport to
Okay.
travel with now, as long as they let me have it. I mean, I'm not very friendly to Canada sometimes, so maybe they'll pull that on me. So I'm dealing with getting others, but yeah, we can lose our tax. I created a couple software companies. I sold them in Canada, and like you said, kind of sort of temporarily retired, and that was what brought me down to Central America. Ended up in Nicaragua first, and love Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, this area. Lived in Belize for a while, so I kind of know the countries down here pretty well. And we have communities, the Veritas Village communities in Panama, Nicaragua, and starting one in Costa Rica right now, and we're constantly expanding.
So which ones are people actually living in today?
Nicaragua is probably the furthest along right
Okay.
now. Costa Rica, we just acquired the property about 6 months ago. We're going through the permitting. And in Panama, we have two, one in Chiriquí. It's called Veritas Village. They're all named Veritas Villages, but Veritas Village, Chiriquí, Veritas Village, Coronado are the two Panama ones. The homes in Coronado will have people living in them probably by February or March later this year. In Chiriquí, people are already living there, so it's smaller, but it's got a beautiful river running through it, and it's really we've done some interesting things in the Chiriquí one that we're always learning, right, as we go along to make something more self-sustainable. And that one I really like because we've got kind of the grocery store version of the farmers market, or not the farmers market, the orchards, the community orchards. So we basically trained the trees to grow up the vines on like an aisle. So you're literally walking down the aisle in the community orchard, picking what you want, right? Bananas and or whatever, mangoes, whatever thing. So it's really like going shopping. But it's a beautiful way to live because, I mean, once you've bought your home, it's just, there's not really many costs. You have an HOA fee, but other than that, and property taxes in some of the countries, fortunately not here in El Salvador, but in some of the other countries, they're low though. And so the goal is to always get to like a zero kind of cost of living. Your power is free. It's totally produced by your own solar system. The water is free in the community. The food is free in the community. It's really not much to spend your money on, and amenities are free if you're a member of the community. And so the only thing that we really have to deal with is HOA fees and property tax. And that's why we actually put in Bitcoin miners to use the excess solar power to use the money made from that. We're getting pretty close. We're getting to the point where they pretty much offset those costs, and theoretically you could live in a Veritas Village at no cost. So
nice. Are the Bitcoin miners per individual home, or is that something that's done by the community as a whole?
At this point, they're all per individual home, and everybody mines their own. We've tried different things. We've had solar farms and things like that, and at this point, every home is kind of along the independence thing of the first philosophy. Every home is also independent. If one guy's power goes out, this one doesn't, right? And that was part of the problem. It's interesting human nature, right? That despite the fact that the power was free, people are like, well, John's using more than I'm using. It's like, who cares? You all have enough. But people wanted their own systems. And part it is in the philosophy, the kind of libertarian philosophy too, of like just being self-reliant to some degree, but self-reliant within a community. Like you could go buy, a ranch or whatever farm in any one of these countries at a reasonable cost and be out there doing your own thing. But it's kind of nice to know you have neighbors, like-minded neighbors. That's one of the nicest things about the communities. We have welcome centers and things like that in the communities. You can go in the gym or whatever. You can go sit down and have a glass of wine at the welcome center, watch the sunset, talk to people. There's no censorship or cancel culture, right? It's a bunch of like-minded people from all over the world, but it's a great place to, you have people wonder about whether they're going to have friends. It's like you end up having a lot of friends in these communities. So.
And most the people that are buying properties in your guys' communities, what countries are they coming from?
All over. The other day it was showing our Coronado property there was 10 different couples looking at the property from 10 different countries.
Wow.
So it's like, not a single one was overlapping. It was Italy, Germany, Netherlands, Scotland, UK, Canada, US, New Zealand, Australia. I probably forgot a couple in there, but it's amazing.
So a decent number of Europeans
Yeah,
looking. Oh
yeah. So
wow.
quite a few. Right now, I mean, there's always countries that go through the cycle, right? The UK at the moment that we're speaking is
Yeah.
going a little nuts, right, with their censorship and exit taxes and wealth taxes that they're talking about. And it's really they've had, well, this last year they had the highest exodus of high net individuals of any country in the world, which, there's Germany and Canada and other countries like that are not far behind. They're also talking about the
They
same.
all seem to be competing to be the worst.
Yeah,
So
I guess they don't see it that way, but that's certainly the way we see it. So, I mean, we were just talking earlier. It's kind of good for our business, but I don't like that it's good
yeah.
for our business. I mean, I still love Canada as the country I was born in. It's a beautiful natural country with mountains and oceans and spectacular nature. Their political system is entirely screwed up, and their economic crisis that they're going to go through, the housing crisis and printing money just like the U.S. and everything like that. It's just not sustainable. So it's only a matter of time. In fact, I have lots of Venezuelan friends, and they're saying, "Oh, you know that Canada is going to be another Venezuela, right?" And it's like, yeah, I know, unfortunately, but nobody believes me. Right? Nobody thinks these first world countries can turn into that.
Yeah, I'm continued to be shocked by how far Canada keeps pushing the envelope in the wrong direction.
Left,
Yeah,
like, yeah.
it's like every month I hear something and I'm like, that can't be real. And nope, it is.
Yeah, no, it's particularly surprising for those of us that were Canadian and grew up in what years ago was a completely different. I mean, when I started software companies, that was back in the '90s, so I'm dating myself a little bit, but it was a good place to start a company, right? The taxes were reasonably low, and at least there was things you could do to minimize taxes, and they were promoting startup entrepreneurial companies. By the time I sold the company, it was brutal. Like, the reason I left Canada wasn't the weather; it was the taxes, and the authoritarian governments that were coming in, and then over the last years they censored Facebook and everything like that. You don't see the same ads. You can't see them. That literally says it's blocked because it's in Canada. It's like being in a dictatorship. Right? So,
It's crazy. So I'm guessing since you moved to Latin America so long ago, you've made pretty much all the mistakes that an expat, can make. So I'd be curious as for you to just give people a couple pointers on things, whether it's when you're looking for houses or, going
well,
into
we
business,
oh man, I don't even know where to start with
yeah.
stories of mistakes. I mean, I continue to make mistakes, but hopefully less than I did 2 decades ago. But yeah, we actually have an expat guide that we have, I think, on our website at veritasvillages.com. You can download it and free or whatever. And we try to update it fairly often with new things that we're learning. My wife Andrea is from Ecuador, so she brings the Latina angle to the thing, and it's like, yeah, this is how we feel about things here, and we're not fans of being woke, and you don't see that kind of stuff down here. And I don't care personally what people think of my personal politics. We're pretty open about the fact that we're libertarian style. I mean, you don't have to be a libertarian to live in the communities, but you have to be in a live and let live kind of mindset, and open to hearing other people's theories. And that doesn't mean you have to cancel them, right? You can agree to disagree like we used to do. And in the Bitcoin Venn diagram of that, the libertarian style of life, I guess, and the culture that's down here in Latin America, and Bitcoiners, that Venn diagram is very much of an overlap. So yeah, yeah, one of my favorite stories, and people might have heard it before, but we were building homes in Nicaragua. This was literally 20 years ago, and this was some of the first homes that I was building, and I had lots of issues, so I was really careful with this one. And this home actually happened to be unusual. It was fractionally owned, so there's 9 shares in this home with different owners. So, and the different owners we allowed to choose the paint colors for different parts of the home. And I thought right off the bat, this is going to be a nightmare. But surprisingly, the nightmare wasn't with the people that were choosing. They kind of agreed and said they had accent colors for one wall or whatever. And then I came in, so knowing that I this was going to be a potential issue, I got a pencil and I wrote on the walls like Sherwin-Williams 107 or whatever the color was and every wall had a different number on it. And I remember coming in on a Thursday afternoon and looking at the walls and going, it's pretty good. They actually, even had some angled walls that had the right colors on them and everything. And, oh, great, just do another coat and I'll come back on Saturday and we'll wrap it up, right? And so I came back on Saturday and the entire interior of the house was robin egg blue. And I was like, what happened here? What's going on? And they said, well, we had a lot of blue. It's like, you had a lot of other colors too. And it's like, well, everybody likes blue, right? You like blue. I said, well, not that much, right? So I said, no, seriously, what happened? And say, we painted over the numbers. And it's like, but you had the colors after it. So anyway, so there was the instructions had to be very, very clear. And so there's lots of stories like that. I mean, someday I think I'm going to write a book on learning how to survive in Latin America. From our standpoint, though, you have to have a lot of stamina to go from North America or Europe to move here and do business, because it's a different world. If you think you can just have a home built and walk, remotely and, call in once in a while and see how it's going to go, you'll learn very quickly that doesn't work. It's not like hiring a builder in Detroit or something and saying, here, I'll come back in 7 months and see how it looks.
I always laugh because I run into that. People here, they're like, well, we're just going to have it. We found the builder and I'm like,
and it's the same in all these countries. Like, the beauty of this culture is it's extremely tranquilo, very relaxed, but they also don't like to say no. So if you say, are you a plumber? Yes. Are you an electrician? Yes. Are you lay concrete? Yes. They will never say no. So it's the same thing when you ask, are you a builder? Yes. And you might not even be hiring a builder when you think you've hired, oh yeah, he says he's a really good builder. I bet he does. He probably never touched a hammer. So.
Yeah, I always the example I always give people is like, you can't tell them you want 4 electrical outlets in the room, because if you do that,
right,
you'll come back and they'll be lined up all next to each other on one wall.
Yeah, or one will be this way, one will be that way.
You got to specify exactly where you want them, and otherwise they'll be like, hey, we put 4 electrical outlets. They're all right there.
And that's one of the benefits to buying in one of our communities. It's not a sales pitch for the communities, but we have gone through all that, right? And we have people on site. And I always say we're the buffer between North American expectations and local delivery.
Yeah.
Right. So if there's nobody in the home telling them every inch of the way, and it's human nature too. If nobody's watching, it's like, well, maybe I'll put in a smaller rebar than they spec because I can make a little more money on it then, right? So it has to be watched like a hawk, and you have to be extremely picky, and sometimes it's tiring, right? It's just literally tiring to be, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to rip that down and redo it. It's wrong, and so and then you multiply that times hundreds of homes, so that we have a lot of work, but we're getting really good at it, and and once you do it enough times, you do get the good builders that actually do know what they're doing, and then you can have a really good product. But people think it's, oh, you just want to sell me a home. It's like, no, I just want you to enjoy what you got. And the reason, we build all the homes in our own communities. People can, it's freedom-oriented community. People can design the homes themselves. We have a bunch of designs that we think are really nice, and our architects are very skilled, and they're beautiful homes. But if you want to do something different, which people do all the time, you can bring us your designs, but we're going to build it because it will represent your thoughts on the community. If you get a crappy home, and it's the same with rentals. We don't really like property management rentals. We have our own division of property and rental management called Veritas RPM, Rental Property Management. And we only do that not because we want to. It's because if somebody is renting their home and somebody stays in it and they say, oh, it wasn't clean, it was miserable, and this didn't work and that didn't work, because rental companies often don't really care. Right?
Yeah.
Then it reflects on the community poorly, and then maybe they were going to buy a home, but they won't now because they had a bad experience. So that first impression is huge and becomes a big part of the community. So that we build the homes and we rent them. So.
And just so people have like an idea, on what building a home costs in Central America, what are kind of the ranges they should expect to pay per square foot?
Yeah, it's a little different in each country, obviously. El Salvador will be less expensive than Costa Rica, for instance. Panama's sort of in the middle. Nicaragua's a little bit lower again, but definitely relative to North America and Europe, you'll find it definitely less expensive. Like, we have homes ranging from about, like I said, we do kind of luxury homes, so it's not the bargain basement homes that you're getting. So they're ranging 200, 250, up to whatever you want to spend millions of dollars on the mansions and that. But properties that, our Coronado properties started at around $70,000 or $80,000 for a decent size, like, eighth to quarter of an acre kind of property.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put a lot of it is, we do have an offering usually at the price point that gets you into the residency program too. So in Panama, for instance, they have two residencies by investment. One is the Friendly Nations visa, which is for people that come from nations they consider friendly. So from U.S., Canada, Germany, all the top, typical nations. And if you spend $200,000 on a home, you can use that as your residency application. And if you're from a non-friendly nation, so unfriendly nations, I guess is what they would be. And, the other countries that I won't name them, but people will know what they are. But you can still, for $300,000, you can get the golden visa. And, that's honestly, so you spend $300,000 on your home and you get the residency, full, permanent residency. So now if crap hits the fan like a COVID again, and you want to come down and live in a normal place where you don't have to wear a mask or get vaccinated or whatever you want in one of our communities, then you can live like that, and you have the residency and you don't have to leave. COVID lasted longer than a tourist visa typically does. So, we could get into that and what I think might be the next COVID. I have my own theories, but there will be some event, right, to test people's patience again, and we'll see what.
Now I gotta hear what's the next COVID going to be, Patrick?
Well, I think it's going to be a climate change issue. I think it's going to be mark my words in case I'm right, but it's going to be like there's solar flares or something, so you have to stay inside. You're locked down again. It's not safe to go outside. It's like that's one of the theories that I think is why the climate change obsession is so intense, and it's obviously profitable for a lot of people too. But maybe it's being set up for the next thing. I don't know how many times you can cry wolf on a virus, right?
Well, I don't know. They've been crying wolf on the climate thing for 30 years now.
Isn't it amazing?
So
like when you and I were growing up, it was like acid rain and
it was global cooling. I remember global cooling.
Yeah, it was on Time magazine. Right? So the world's going to be in a deep freeze soon.
Going to be in a deep freeze.
And then and then there was holes in the ozone, and then there was, oh God, it's been, and every few years it changes, but people still adopt it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I got frustrated. I actually did a podcast based on just the climate change issue, of what I call the climate change obsession. And it was mostly because my one daughter, I have two grandsons now, but before they were born, she was like, I don't want to bring any kids into this world. It's terrible. The climate is terrible. It's ending and stuff. I was like, I've had enough of this. Like, it's now a reason that people aren't having families.
I hear that.
Yeah.
It's quite prevalent.
Yeah,
that's
it's
crazy.
serious. Like, it happened in my family. And like I said, fortunately they had children anyway, in 50 years from now, I won't be here, but my grandchildren will be, and they'll be enjoying the same planet that we are now. So anyway.
No, it's crazy. The people that even the people that are in counseling because of stress related to the.
It's actually really bad. Like, I mean, between COVID and climate change, our generation nowadays is just growing up in fear.
Yeah,
it's not a good thing. I think there's going to be ramifications to that. Like,
meanwhile, the wealthy elite that are pushing all this are buying beachfront, properties hand over fist. That
amazing.
If they really believed what
the ocean was rising, then exactly.
That's we could definitely go down that rabbit
that's another
hole,
podcast.
But we won't get stuck there. But I'm curious. I have one question for you that I'm curious on, because you have these freedom-minded, communities, and this is something that's come up in El Salvador.
Right.
In general, and then maybe I'm wrong, but in general, I think Latin America's gun laws are strict, at least by American standards. Maybe not by Canadian standards, but by American standards. Have you found that being an issue for your customers at all, that they want to bring their guns, or is it easier to get permits in
It's
certain
actually,
countries?
for us, it's been, I mean, I own guns. I have handguns and rifles
In Panama.
in Panama,
Okay.
and did in Nicaragua too.
And no issue.
No issues. In fact, it was I mean, because I've had gun licenses before, I guess it was easier to go in and say,
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. But yeah, lots of, man, I would say 90% of the people that want to live in our communities are, you know, enjoy their guns and
Yeah.
go into the gun range and things like that. And I mean, I guess that's the other side of living in one of these communities. You're pretty safe. It's like, everybody, your neighbors are probably having guns. So, I mean, we're not trying to create a militia or anything, but it's people like their freedoms, and part of freedoms is generally gun ownership. Whether you even want to own a gun or not, it's just nice to know that you can. And like I said, and Costa Rica, I mean, the countries have different things. I think it's the same here in El Salvador. You can't get a hunting license or at least for deer or whatever in Costa Rica. So it's kind of nice, I guess. They see a lot of deer running around because nobody's hunting them. But coming from Canada, that was kind of unusual for me. That's a big part of life for people, right? But so it's actually not been an issue at all.
So what has been the biggest challenge you've seen in clients that have moved down? Has it been more adjusting to the culture? Has it, what do you see as kind of red flags for people of like, maybe these type of people shouldn't move out of Canada or wherever they're from?
There's always, I mean, I call it a 2 to 5% of people that just bring their problems to wherever they go, right? You know, if you're miserable in Idaho, you're probably going to be miserable in El Salvador, right? If that's just who you are. But if it's really based on you want to get out of that kind of authoritarian stuff that's coming down, then you'll love it down here. The culture is great. The thing that everybody will struggle with, hands down, like there's just no way around it. If you're coming from a first world country to down here, you better develop some patience because things move slowly. That is the beauty and the struggle at the same time, right? I'm sure you've been through that. I'm Canadian, but both my parents were German, and they ran our household like it was a BMW assembly line, right? So you got things done, and you got them done quickly, and there was no waiting. If you went to a meeting, you were there 15 minutes early, and none of that happens down in Latin America. And so on one hand, it's great. I mean, my mother used to always say, "Man, you got to develop some patience," right? And so I'm in the process of doing that now by living down here. But it can be frustrating. Like, the other day I went to buy some guitar strings, and I've had this experience several times, but I just wanted a pack of strings that were hanging on the wall behind the guy's head. And I said, that was the strings I want. And he's like, he fills out a form. Okay, you got to walk over to the warehouse and they'll pick them for you. It's like, yeah, but they're right there. Like, you got 8 packs hanging on the wall of what I want right there. It's like, yeah, but this is the process. There's triplicate form. And then when you come back with the guitar strings in the form, then you have to pay at another booth. And that's another process with more forms. And it's just like, it took me maybe an hour to buy $8 guitar strings. And so, if you want to get a lot of things done in a day, that can sometimes be difficult. I mean, you might be able to go grocery shopping and maybe one other thing in a day. Otherwise but it also is, the time just slows down. Time is less important. And honestly, I think that probably makes people live longer too. So it's just not that rat race.
Yeah. I've noticed it's not quite as bad as that anymore here in El Salvador.
Or maybe you're changing, Mike.
Well, maybe I'm getting more patient, but I have noticed, because it was before, like, you go to this one, I'll go to this one. You have, I think part of, just as the economy has improved here and wages have gone up, businesses have had to rationalize things. Before, wages were so low, they just, you'd have, like, you walk into a store and there's like 10 people working there, and in the US there would be maybe 2. And so I mean, you're outnumbered by the employees most of the time. But I mean, I'm going to pick on a company here. Sorry for these guys, but Panafoto is
it's like a Best Buy of Panama,
Okay.
right? So it's huge stores all
Yeah.
over Panama City. Panama City is like the Manhattan or Dubai of Central America, right? It's skyscrapers and tons of expats and everything. So you'd think it would move in a different pace. And it, like you said, as development happens, it does change. But I just keep thinking, man, if a Best Buy opened up beside you, you guys would be done, because you'd at least have to change that whole thing. And it's just, I don't know if it stemmed from creating jobs or if it stemmed from a bit of a lack of trust, like the guy that handles the product can't handle the cash too, and all the different reasons that could be behind it. But it's just been like that for so long that I don't think they see that it's unusual.
Yeah, I don't think they know how you would do it any different.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that kind of leads into the residency thing that I kind of wanted to mention too. Is like, as you know, we're Autris looking for a property in El Salvador to create a Veritas Village El Salvador, or multiple ones, right? And we work with companies like Tipolis. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, with Titus Gable and Alex Voss, and they're kind of
involved with Prospera, right?
They were in the governance part in the
Okay.
beginning, yeah. But we go and talk to governments all the time about what would attract investment to the countries. They are more on the governance side, like they're super specialists in freedom-oriented governance, special economic zones, and that. And our side is more, the practical. We're gonna build these Bitcoin Citadel communities, and ultimately we're going to end up, building a Singapore here somewhere in Central America as soon as one of the countries kind of gets their complete act together. But like I mentioned, the residencies in Panama and in Nicaragua, you can get a residency for roughly $30,000 in investment. In Honduras, it's $50,000. Costa Rica, $250,000. Panama has the $200,000 and $300,000, and you can invest in things like homes, and it's not just giving the money away. You get something back for it. You get an asset. El Salvador's really only comparable thing to that is the $1 million Bitcoin thing, and that's just too much, right? It puts itself outside the market. I mean, even if you have $10 million, you might not want to spend a tenth of your money on an El Salvadorian residency, right? So I think.
Well, I think it's a little. I mean, I definitely agree with what you're saying that it's expensive, but it's a little bit different because it's a passport versus a residency.
Right.
So
Fair enough.
you can get actually residency in El Salvador fairly easy, but you have to be living here.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference, I think,
Yeah,
between the
then
other
Panama
programs.
is you got to be there 1 day every 2 years,
Yeah.
right? So it depends on what you're getting the home for. If you're permanently sure that you're going to move down, that works. But even that, like the other ones too. And I'm not dissing Salvador. I love El Salvador. I just think
but we've run into something like there's actually another podcaster. I was talking to her, and she said, yeah, we came here. We want to be here, but we need to travel for our podcast.
Yeah.
And we were having issues because we couldn't be out of the country, more than so many days. And so I think El Salvador's going to have to adjust their residency program if they want to attract those type of people.
I don't know, but I've heard rumors, from various people that is in the works, and I hope so. I mean, Bukele did amazing things, like introducing Bitcoin, adoption as a currency. It's like a jump from here to there, right? I mean, radical stuff for a president anywhere in the world. And what he's been able to do with, the crime is unbelievable. I mean, obviously, the history, and it's gone from one of the worst countries in the world to, I think it just surpassed Canada. Canada's going the wrong direction, so it's kind of a low-hanging bar now with Canada. But no, it's Canada used to be considered one of the safest countries in the world, and now El Salvador is more safe as far as the stats come out and juggle a little bit, but it's in the same, ballpark, and that's a radical thing. And you can feel it, right? It. You walk down the street here, you can be on your phone or whatever. Nobody's going to snatch it out of your hand and that sort of thing. I was just in Europe and a couple of countries there, and in Barcelona, I almost got pickpocketed twice. And I was there for like 3 days. It's like, so it's like 2/3 of the time people were trying to pickpocket me. It's like that. Like I was just so happy to get back to Latin America where I don't have to think about that it was ridiculous. It was like two different cities, and I was just very disappointed that it's kind of where it's gone there. So I can see why people, we're getting people from Spain and Italy and even Switzerland and places like that, right? So people are realizing what's going on.
So of all the different places you've lived in Latin America, why did you guys kind of land on Panama as being home?
Well, Panama, I have to travel a lot, and we decided to headquarter our businesses there because it's the hub for the airlines down
Yeah.
here. That was a huge part of it. All the banking, a lot of the major banking is done in Panama. So it was probably a little bit emotional too. My wife and I were living in Belize on Ambergris Key, which is basically an island, and during the lockdown of COVID, and you can get island fever at the best of time, but when you can't leave for a couple of years, you really get island fever. So we had to do a conference in Panama, and we were driving into the city, and like I said, it kind of looks like Dubai or
Yeah.
whatever when you're coming off from the airport to the city. I was like, I need this, some civilization, and we need this from the company standpoint to be easy to get to different places. And if you do have to travel a lot, it's nice. I live 15 minutes away from the airport, and unfortunately, from what I have to do is a lot of back and forth, and I kind of do the circle between our communities, right? So it's a lot of travel, and it's like I said, the banking. I guess you guys have that a lot here in El Salvador with the kind of combination of crypto and fiat banking, but in Panama,
Well, but not really, to be honest. The banks here are super difficult to deal with,
yeah.
and I think are really behind. And so, yeah,
Well, I
it's
don't want to be an advertisement for Tower Bank, but I mean they deserve kudos because they stuck their neck out, and they have this Aikiji app, which you literally have your crypto wallet and your fiat money in like a regular bank account, U.S. dollar bank account, and you can move money back and forth like that, like it's a snap. I do it quite regularly, so you could get paid in Bitcoin, and you can move it into U.S. dollars. Like for us, we accept Bitcoin for building homes, or like buying a home, buying a property. But other than in El Salvador, we can't really buy the materials and the labor in Bitcoin. So we have to do the conversion of the money over to build the home. So that makes it really nice to have a bank like that where you can do that and make it very easy. And like I said, they stuck their neck out. They took a beating from the other banks. Like I also bank at some of the other banks in Panama, and our company has accounts there. But some of the other banks, and I won't name them, but they were taking Tower Bank off of their ACH transfers, like their internal wire transfers, so you couldn't move money to Tower as a punishment to Tower for being crypto friendly. But what ended up happening is so many of the expats that were coming down, I was referring them all. You can just walk in, and like in the U.S., you can walk into a bank and get an account within minutes. You can at Tower too, which you couldn't in most banks down
do you
here.
have to be a resident of
No,
Panama for that?
you have your passport, and away you go. And
Okay.
like we hired a guy from Canada as our controller just a couple weeks ago, and I just said, go to Tower and open an account. And he just walked in, and he's not a resident yet, and he's just came in with his passport and good to go. And he was actually showing me the upgrade on the app. He's like, oh wow, you can do that now too, and they've added stable coins and stuff like that too. So pretty impressed. So I mean, there's other things happening in the other countries, and a lot of this was led by Salvador. So Salvador and Bukele and yourself and what you've done here in Bitcoin Beach is amazing and deserve all the credit in the world. But the new mayor of Panama City now allows your property taxes. You don't have property taxes here, but we do in Panama. And for the condo that my wife and I have in the city, we can pay our property taxes in Bitcoin now, which is pretty radical for the city and for the country. And he's a huge Bitcoiner, so he pushes it that way. And the movement's really happening in the other countries around Salvador too. So.
I got to lead a panel at the Bitcoin conference in Vegas with the mayor and Mayor.
It's a great name. He was born to do his job.
And then Stacy and then Max Kaiser, which was a lot of fun. And then I remember seeing I don't know, it was a couple months afterwards that I don't know if it ever went through, but he was proposing that ships could pay their Panama Canal fees in Bitcoin, and if they paid in Bitcoin, that they would be put to the front of the line to come through.
I haven't seen that happen.
I don't know
yet,
if that came or not.
Hopefully, it's still in the works.
I love that idea.
Yeah. Or yeah, there's other things where you're like it's front of the line or getting a discount for paying in
Yeah.
Bitcoin, and yeah, no, he's doing a great job. I'm guessing sometime in the future he'll be the president of the country. So
Yeah, he seems like he's on
very
that
popular.
track.
He's got the same kind of
He's got that
Bukele,
Bukele vibe
yeah,
to him.
Bukele
So
following, right?
yeah,
So,
I've seen he has a huge social media
and
following,
like
and he's
Bukele is young and
yeah,
vibrant and
very well
yeah,
spoken, very sharp.
yeah,
And I got to talk to him backstage, afterwards, and just genuinely, he's not just doing the Bitcoin thing,
yeah,
to get clicks or whatever.
yeah.
Like he genuinely believes it's the future and kind of understands it. So
Yeah,
so
no,
that was
it's
nice to
great
see.
for the country, and hopefully it keeps that Bitcoin virus keeps spreading, and we can
Yeah.
keep, and well, even with what's happened in Venezuela lately, hearing through different channels that it's very likely to become more Bitcoin friendly there too. So I'm excited about what's potential, and I don't really care what the far left says on the social media, but you can't find a single Venezuelan that's not happy about what happened. I think
Yeah.
so. Whether you love or hate Trump, it doesn't really matter. It was a good thing for the region, not just for Venezuela. Venezuela used to be. I mean, this is my warning to my Canadian friends. Venezuela used to be the most wealthy country in South America until it turned socialist and communist, and it just destroyed it, right? And it still has the largest oil reserves in the whole world for a small country. That's pretty impressive. And then I look at Canada, and it's going the other direction. It's also got enormous resources that are just not being taken advantage of, and the same kind of stuff that the woke stuff that's happening in the government is just destroying that economy.
I remember. So I got married 26 years ago, and originally we were planning on going on our honeymoon to Margarita Island
Oh, yeah?
in Venezuela,
Yeah.
and that was I think right when Chavez was
Right on the
like coming
timing,
into
yeah.
power, and it was all this turmoil, and so
That's right. It was exactly that
we
time.
wound up going to Bali instead. But yeah, it was at that time Venezuela was like, I mean, it was like a cool place to be, and it's sad to see.
Well, we were
how
talking
much
about
it's-
the rise in the value of property in the different countries around here. Panama's got a huge exodus from other countries coming into the country.
Yeah.
El Salvador, obviously, with the Bitcoin side, especially the people, and I was telling my friends this over the last year or two when this kind of, the U.S. was starting to say, hey, you're going to change, or we're going to change things for you. And a lot of my friends started buying like penthouse condos in Caracas, and people thought they were crazy. And probably overnight they've 10 times their value.
Oh yeah.
Because they were literally getting a beautiful penthouse apartment for like $15,000. So it's going to go back to normal at some point, not too distant future. I wish I had. I have a good Venezuelan buddy, and he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm looking for something for you." It's like,
Did they go down, or did they buy them like without going down?
they just bought them sight unseen.
Oh really? Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I guess.
No, I would love to have something on Margarita Island. I've thought about that, but as an American, you can't even get into Venezuela. So it's
Well, now you can.
Can you now?
I'm sure.
Okay.
I mean, the airlines had stopped. It was interesting. It was just before they took Maduro that, I got a bunch of notices on the different airlines from flying out of Panama that we've canceled flights to Venezuela. It's like, I wonder what's going on. Somebody told them,
Yeah.
get your planes out of that country.
Out of the sky. Interesting. So what is your kind of long-term vision with the company? And I know you mentioned earlier that you guys went public. So
yeah, I mean,
that shows you want this to grow and become something substantial.
Yeah, a lot of our clients are very privacy oriented, very freedom oriented, and they kind of think, "What are you doing, Pat? Like, what's with going public in a U.S. public, stock exchange market?" I kind of think like use the system for your, the freedom benefit as well, right? We are growing very rapidly, and after looking at the properties that we were looking at, you and I today, and here in this country, and I'm going to Argentina in a week or so, and Argentina with Milei as another libertarian president. I kind of sat on the sidelines and watched Argentina a little bit, just because you don't know if that's a blip in time, right? If he's going to, but this last midterms, he did pretty well, and it looks like he's gaining popularity. So much like Bukele, it
Yeah.
looks like a longer term thing. So we're definitely wanting to create a Veritas village in, either the Mendoza, Salta, Cordoba area, beautiful vineyard areas. And our Veritas villages tend to have a little bit of a theme. Like in Costa Rica, it's more of a coffee kind of idea. In Venezuela, in Argentina, it will be more of a vineyard type of thing. Like you want to make your own wine and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's easier to raise money, frankly, just as a public company, because there's liquidity for the investors. If you're private, you probably won't get the same valuation, and it's more difficult to have an exit strategy. So that was the main reason. And we acquired a company called Bitcorp, which we've always had a Bitcoin treasury in the company when it wasn't really considered a thing. Like for years, we've been selling our property in Bitcoin and just hanging on to it, and wanted to always have a certain percentage of our treasury in Bitcoin. And 5 years ago, when we told people that, they thought we were nuts, right? Like, what is wrong with you? This is a thing that's going to disappear, and you're going to have, what, 40% of your assets in something that's going to be gone? Well, at the time, it was, I don't know, 17,000 or something like that for Bitcoin, and it turned out well. But we continue to do that. We continue to grow it, and Bitcorp was kind of specialist in Bitcoin treasuries and companies, so we acquired them 6 months ago or so, and bringing in that specialty and to kind of bolster our own strategy on that side. And we're a little different. Like, there's a lot of Bitcoin treasury companies, and I kind of got a bit of a beating over the last few months, right? A lot of them that are just leveraged too much and really.
Well, a lot of them don't really. I like with you guys, you have a real company that goes along with this. Is just like, hey, this is where we put our savings, our earnings go into Bitcoin, rather than
that's all
you're
really
doing
for
is buying Bitcoin.
We're not leveraging a cent to continue to grow more Bitcoin. It's just a philosophical. We want to hold the Bitcoin, and we have a core business that's creating communities, and they've been very popular. I was telling you earlier that our problem is inventory. Our Coronado property is sold out, and 100 homes or whatever over a few months, right? So that's a great problem to have. It just shows you how many people around the world are like. It's rewarding for me, because I just thought maybe my wife and I were the only people that wanted to live in a community like that, right? And so when I have people from all over the world saying, I can't believe we found you. Like, we didn't know anybody was doing this, right? There's a lot of people around the world that talk about, liberty-oriented communities. And there's only, most of them start with having this super desire for the ultimate governance, right? Like, I get this kind of freedom or I'm not doing anything, right? And that's unfortunately where it stops. So it's very hard for sovereign governments, especially in Latin America, to say, no, I'm going to give you 300 acres to go build your own world, your own country, basically. In order to get to the point where we have that kind of level of self-governance, we have to prove it. Like, I can go in and talk to any government and say, we're going to bring in so many investors, and everybody does that, right? It's like, if you do this, you're going to get all this investment. And then it falls on deaf ears because they've heard it 1,000 times. And you can see especially in Latin America, you can see a lot of these beach communities that, somebody thought they were a developer. They bought this big tract of land. They sold to their brother and their dentist, and that's where it stops. And then nobody's paying the HOA. The community dies, and you see all these ghost towns around, right? Yeah. That's in every country. I guess it's in the U.S. as well, but it's especially prevalent in resort areas, right? But now, like in a Panamanian government, I can actually, they'll call me and say, like, you really did something cool here. It's not just, I don't know, a few hundred people moving to one of our communities. It's they're bringing their businesses. One of the guys that is an interesting one, because he is a Canadian guy that makes snowmobile parts, and he's bringing it to Panama, that business. Like, there's not a single snowmobile in Panama, but he's bringing his business there because he can. First, he can make it a tax-free business because his revenue is coming from outside the country. It's a territorial tax, much like here, right? But we're on we're very close to the canal as well, so you can get all the materials very inexpensively. The labor in Latin America is less expensive. So the government starts seeing that you're doing that. You're bringing in people that are actually bringing investment, not just they're buying their home and sitting there and watching, drinking a beer every day. It's like they're doing things. They're creating jobs. So now that was kind of my ground up approach to getting more and more freedom oriented governance in the communities. And we will over time. And then we work with companies like Tipolis, and they're the experts at that kind of special economic zones and kind of on steroids, right, like to the next level. And so when we work together, they realize they got to, compromise a little bit, and we can show that it works. So that's a much more powerful, story to go to the governments with.
No, I love that. I think sometimes we let, perfection get in the way of us like actually moving forward on something.
Yeah.
So you have lots of people that have, they think they have all the right ideas, but they never make any moves. They never do anything.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same for me with software. It was the same for me with solar systems. People told me, I told them I'm going to come and make off-grid luxury homes, like 5-6 bedroom homes with flat screen TVs and 15 fridges and a bowling alley in the basement and stuff like that. And they're like, you can't do that. I'm like, well, now you challenged me. Now I'm going to prove it, because I'm not going to talk about it. So we did it, and probably did it in the hardest country to start with. It was in Nicaragua many years ago, but people still have their feelings about the countries down here, and it doesn't matter. You could talk to somebody about El Salvador today. They have no idea that the crime is lower here than in the U.S.
Yeah.
And they're just like, well, isn't El Salvador like the most dangerous place in the world? And, if they've heard that for a couple of decades in the old days, and that CNN clip never left their mind, right? So we're kind of on a mission to show people it's a great place to be down here. And these countries down here have been socialist. They have been communist. They've learned the hard way. Like, they've flipped, right? They're now, there's a heat map that I had from, I need to bring that up sometime, but it was like 20 years ago, 30 years ago here in Latin America. And they were all kind of, all the blue countries that were showing the socialist sort of left-leaning side. And now today, and it overlapped them, and it was just so much more capitalism. Ecuador with Noboa, and obviously Milei, and Argentina, and all the countries are, but they're kind of taking a page out of Bukele's book. It's interesting, when they get elected, they come here and they meet with Bukele first.
Yeah,
right? It's like,
yeah.
How did you do that? Right. So it's pretty impressive.
It is remarkable. Back to you were mentioning solar. I find that fascinating that you guys do everything off grid, but still, like you were saying, not bare bones, but you have air conditioners, you have the refrigerators, you have all of that. You were mentioning to me earlier that whole industry is really transformed in the last 5 years, that costs have come down with batteries and all of that. I'm curious, like for our house here, we probably use, I don't know, 3,500 kilowatt hours. Does that sound right? 3,500? We use a lot of electricity.
Yeah,
here.
probably more, I would guess. But yeah, I mean, so
what would be
an average Florida home, for instance, that people walk outside and leave the door open or whatever, and air conditioning all the time. That's a 3-bedroom home, smaller home than yours, but it would be about 30,000 or 30 kilowatt hours a day on average.
Okay, so
we're times a month. That's 900.
900, yeah. No, so we're like,
you're like 4x that.
Yeah. So what would a system like that? Is it possible to have an off-grid system like that?
Yeah.
And what does that entail?
I mean,
how many panels do you need
that's
to
the
have,
thing. Like, I was doing this in the 90s, where in Canada, where you barely get any sunlight, right? So relative to the angle of the sun. But down here, nearer the equator, you produce so much solar power, and the technology is just radically different on all fronts. Now, there's 3 main components: the panels, the inverter, and the batteries. The battery, the new LiFePO batteries, lithium ferrous phosphorus batteries, are amazing. They don't, people think they're still like they blow up or something. You can shoot a hole in them and nothing happens. They're amazing at storing power. So you get an incredible amount of power. And in the old days, it was like golf cart batteries, right?
Yeah.
They were useless, and they die right away. And so, the battery technology is probably what's changed the most, and that's really changed the game for all this. You can actually have an off-grid system that's great, and way better quality power. So the power in many of the countries down here is kind of not great quality and not terribly reliable.
Yeah.
So being off grid is actually perfect quality sine wave power, and all this stuff, the inverters that create that, right? They take the solar panel, they charge the batteries, they do all the work, and they create your AC power. So you're plugging in. There's nothing in our homes that's any different than any other home. You wouldn't know it, that it's off grid. And we try to be smart about it. Like big power draws, like a stove or a clothes dryer, anything that's kind of like an element, like basically an electrical short. That's what those things are. And we try to use gas for those, so propane or natural gas for those sorts of things. And that's very inexpensive down in this part of the world. Everybody uses it, right? So if you can offload those, then you really have air conditioning, as most of the lighting and fans and stuff like that uses very little power. So so you can live it, and you don't have to think about it, and you don't pay a cent for it after it's installed. And the prices have come way down. Like we include all these systems. They're all sized to the size of the home when we build it. So you get it, and you don't even have to know it exists. And if you really want to be comfortable, you can always add batteries, which is what I would do if you feel like you're really a power abuser. But you can put a generator, like a propane generator, behind it, and just say, oh, if it drops to this level of battery storage, then top it up. But it's not necessary. It's just more of a peace of mind thing.
So what does a system like that cost? Like something that could run my house? Like what would you expect?
Well, I'd have to look at exactly what you need for your house, but
just ballpark. Like
what used to be 50,000 might be 15 now.
Okay, wow.
So
it's come down that much.
And if you're in the solar business and you didn't lower your prices, you're making a killing if you're still selling anything, because competition should have come in. Now we do enough of them, right? Because we're kind of our own biggest customer.
Yeah.
But we have our own batteries made and shipped over, and again, because we're headquartered near the canal, we can get it all there, and then to truck up to Salvador is not much, right? But batteries are heavy. It doesn't matter what technology, they're super heavy. Like the batteries we use are about 600 pounds each, and
wow,
and there could be 3 of them if for a house, 4 for your house probably. So you're looking at 2,400 pounds of batteries, but they're quietly sitting there in a corner somewhere and running your house. So.
And what's the life expectancy on those?
That's gotten a lot better too. About 10 years.
Okay.
So, and God knows, 10 years from now, will that technology even be still what's being used? And if you had to replace them, how much less will they be?
Yeah.
It's one of those technology things, like they just keep coming lower.
Getting cheaper.
To me, it's like buying a cell phone or a laptop or something. You have to bite the bullet at some point and just say, like, I'm going to do it today. I know 6 months from now, they're going to make more powerful panels than right now. Like when we were first doing this, the panels were 75 watts. Now the average one is about 620 watts. Same size, right? So
620 watts.
Yeah.
I did not realize that.
So
wow.
you get a lot more power out of the panels now. And that's changing, like literally week to week sometimes. It's like I order these big orders of panels and inverters and batteries, and by the time it arrives, it's like, oh, there's some new technology. But like I said, you got to eventually just say, look, this house is going live. This is the system it's getting. But we can't stay stuck in the mud. We have a department that just constantly is, updating that. And so.
And do you see other people in Panama doing that also, or are you guys kind of the cutting edge as far as that goes?
Well, I don't see them because when we applied for the permit, we were the only off-grid community. In fact, we had to get the laws changed in Panama, which permitting is not my favorite thing, by the way. If there's one downside to this business, that would be the top of the list for sure. But, every country has their different permitting needs and requirements. But in Panama, the local power company, you were required to hook up to it. And we said, we're not even putting the infrastructure in to run your line, so we can't hook up to you. And it's like, well, you have to. And it's like, so we went through months and months of becoming the first environmental friendly permitted company called they call them a green city there, but it's not quite a city of size. But the idea is we actually can be off grid completely now. And with our off grid too, it's water. We have we have to have our own water processing plant, and each home has its own biodigester for septic and sewer, and you can reuse the output of that to water your lawn and things like that. So there's a lot of pieces that go into becoming really, off grid and not reliant on any government or corporations. So, I mean, I know it sounds maybe a bit conspiracy theorist, but if an authoritarian government does want to affect you or impact your life, cutting your power and your water is the quickest way to do it.
Yeah.
Probably water even faster than power. You can live with candlelight, but you run out of water and being able to flush your toilets and things like that, that gets pretty irritating pretty fast. So, you're seeing that on the verge of that in Canada during COVID, when people weren't complying. It was like, well, we'll just cut your power and your water. So, and you'll quickly comply. So that was one of the reasons we wanted to be off grid. I don't want to be subject to that. Plus, we get to control our own water quality. We don't chemicalize it. We do charcoal filtering and UV light filtering and stuff like that, but no chlorine or anything's added to the water. So if people want to add their own, they can do it at their house, but we don't.
So I've been told by a few different people that there's definitely people from the Salvadoran government, including the president at times, that watches this podcast. So if you, as a developer, could talk to them of what they need to do as far as permitting and those things to make companies like yours want to focus on El Salvador, to bring the jobs here, to bring the investment, what are kind of the few key components that they need to get right?
Well, the permitting, from my personal standpoint, the permitting is extremely important. You make permitting easy and we'll be here, right? That at least together with.
And what do you mean by easy? Like just that the process needs to be clear, or there's certain specific things that need to be in it that are not too stringent, or what? Because, obviously I know you guys like to do everything right, and you guys are very focused on not having a negative impact on the environment. You want to build these beautiful communities. So you're not trying to take shortcuts.
No, not at all.
But you want to clear roads. So what does it take to make that happen?
Well, for example, I mean, the problem is there's a lot of antiquated laws in every country. Certainly, I don't know El Salvador's any as well as I know some of the other ones, but we would definitely look into them. But for instance, the ambiente, the environmental permits, that is almost always the toughest thing to get. We are the most environmentally conscious developer that I know, and it's not just because we're like pie in the sky, like environmentalists. It's because financially it's better. Like I like having power for $0 every month, right? It also happens to be good for the environment. But so when we bought our property in Coronado, Panama, I put a GPS on my truck and I drove around all the farm roads, and I sent that GPS track to our architectural group, and I said, make the master plan from this. We don't have to cut any trees that way. The roads exist. They've been there for 100 years. So when we went to apply for the environmental permit, they said, how many trees are you cutting down for roads? And we said, none. It's like, come on, that's not possible. And it's like, no, we have to come and mark which trees you're going to cut down. And so we're not cutting any down. It's, what about the homes? I said, pretty much every lot that we've spec'd out on this property, there's an open area between the trees. It's a beautiful property with forests and jungles and everything, but there's almost always places on each lot where we don't. I mean, if you want to cut one tree down and you're going to end up putting
a lot of times you have like scrub trees.
Yeah, I mean they don't really count, but we added, like, we're way net positive. We added the orchards and everything like that, so we're thousands of trees probably in addition to what was there. But they came out with their spray paint and spray painted the trees that they thought should cut down, and it's like, what kind of environmental department spray paints the trees? But anyway, so we went through all these. It took us almost 2.5, 3 years to go through the permitting for that, because there's a lack of understanding of something new. That is, you guys are doing, like, the normal developer down in these parts will just, scorched earth the whole thing, right? It just goes down to the ground, and then they build it up, and then they'll plant the palm trees and things later. We don't do that, right? We really like the fact that there's monkeys and parrots and stuff living on our property, and we want to keep it that way. And, we have a lovely creek that runs through it with waterfalls and stuff like that. It's like, we don't want to destroy any of this. That's the whole point. People that are coming down here, the expats that are moving down, like that. They don't want to ruin it. So, look at our application. Our application was 800 pages long of explaining all this. but it still takes forever. And when you tell somebody one day that, yeah, you can come in here and choose your lot, it's all in the master plan, and then it takes you 2.5 years to allow them to start building a home on it, it's very difficult for us as developers to keep people interested for almost 3 years. So I like to think if they can do it in 6 months, I can live with that. 6 months to a year, great. But if it takes a lot longer than that, it's too long. Like,
Yeah.
you're just going to turn off developers. They're just not going to come. And that's, I mean, I'm one of them. I can't keep a business going by disappointing my clients, because they don't understand why it's going to take so long.
Plus, too, even on the pricing side, if you put it in at one price, then you have to deliver it 3 years later, your costs have gone up so much.
And all that time costs money
Yeah.
too, right? And all the consultants that you have to have involved. It just streamline the permitting process, and you will get people investing in the country. For us, because of the style of communities we have, the freedom-oriented, kind of philosophy of them, people do want their residencies here. They don't necessarily need the passport. They want to be able to stay here without having to leave. If, COVID lasted how long? For a year and a half, 2 years before you could, go into an airport again and leave, right? So that doesn't work with, like I said, the tourist visa. Make a permanent residency program that's affordable, like $100,000, $200,000, and let them buy homes with that money. So you're investing in the country, you're creating jobs, you're bringing money into the country, and that's fine. Like, a lot of the countries make you prove that the money came from outside the country into the country to be eligible for the residency program. That's fine. That's the whole point. You're bringing money into the country, whether it's Bitcoin or fiat or whatever, you're bringing it into the country. And I'm all for that. And I really love this area down here, because the countries and most of the governments recognize that investment, you don't have to tax people to death. They're bringing in their money. It's a circular environment. It will make everybody's life better, and it creates so many jobs. And we create hundreds of jobs, right? But we can't if we can't get past the permitting, and we can't get past the residency program. We can't sell somebody a lot if they think, oh man, I got to leave after 3 months or 6 months or whatever, and I might not want to. I might not be able to.
Yeah.
Right? So I would really encourage Bukele and everybody that I'm glad hopefully he's watching this, but I'm happy. I mean, I know there's a lot of other people that are have much more expertise in the residency programs themselves, but I'm just telling you as a matter of fact that it's not competitive right now in Salvador for the residency programs, and it doesn't have to be a passport, right? I mean, if you want to keep the $1 million passport, that's great. I'd love to have one too, and maybe someday I will buy one. But if I could get a residency in El Salvador by, and most expats that are coming down are going to probably spend $200,000 anyway or more on their home. So if that's the bar, fine. That's the same as Panama and roughly the same as Costa Rica. Now you're playing with the other groups, and with the Bitcoin and the low crime and everything here, you've got an advantage, right? You're on level with these guys on that front, but you're way ahead in others. So, like I said, we really want to be part of investing in Salvador. That's been one of the major reasons why we've kind of been sitting on the sidelines a little bit.
Well, that makes sense. I'm curious what you found, the people that are buying your homes, like, is it a significant percentage that are paying in Bitcoin? And do you guys as a company find it much easier to facilitate the transaction when they're paying in Bitcoin rather than dealing with fiat?
Banking, right? Wire transfers and correspondent banks and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Bitcoin.
I'm sure they get held up all the time too. They're going into Panama. And
well, and we don't sell bubble gum or chocolate bars, right? We sell homes. So if somebody's, I don't know, pick a number, $750,000 home or something, comes into the bank, there's so much concern in all the countries down here for money laundering that they're constantly, we have to justify every home purchase. An enormous amount of time goes into that. And it's like, why is John Smith in Alabama sending you $750,000 to Panama? It's like, well, because he wants to get a residency, he's buying a home. So, when you do it in Bitcoin, it's done in seconds, and there's nobody to answer to.
Yeah.
Right. And it's all legitimate business. And thank God that the banks are starting to recognize this, like the Tower Bank that I was mentioning. They can send it to Tower Bank in Bitcoin, and we can convert it to US dollars, and we don't get asked questions now. So, but if almost every bank in the region is concerned, right? And I get it, rightfully so. There's plenty of people from around the world that are funneling, laundering money through the countries down here if they get the chance. So the banks, it was 2016, I think it was, when it was the Panama Papers that really destroyed banking for the ease of banking for a lot of people, because now they have to question every single large amount that comes in. I mean, money launderers aren't going to send $2,000 at a time or something. It's just not worth it. But so those don't get questioned. But when you're selling homes, it's a pain. Right. So,
but if they pay in Bitcoin, you bypass all that.
Yeah,
it's just
it's just perfect. Yeah. I wish everybody paid in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We'll deal with it after that. And then we just got to get all the other countries to accept Bitcoin to buy materials too.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think we're on that pathway. So, well, is there anything else that we didn't cover?
I don't know. I would just encourage people, whether they're thinking about it, come down. A lot of times people just don't have a perception of what it's like. I'm sure you run into that a lot, right? With what people think of El Salvador or whatever, and hear about it and still have, 2-decade-old thoughts on it. And I just encourage people to come down. I have so many friends that just thought I was crazy. I'm sure you did too, coming down to this region. And I had young kids at the time. They're growing up now, but they're like, they're going to get kidnapped. And it's like, oh, and then I finally get them, a decade later to come down here, and they're in love with the place. They come down every year then, right? So instead of going to Hawaii or something, they're coming here. So yeah, it's just come and see it. It's a beautiful place, beautiful culture. Very, very laid back, which is a double-edged sword, but for the most part, it's great. Live and let live kind of culture, and it's just a really nice way to live. And yeah, I would love to have you as neighbors in our communities.
So for people that are interested in one of your communities, is there, what's the best way? Is it just come visit? Can they rent a home there and kind of try it out? What do you usually recommend that people do?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, first of all, I'd say go to veritasvillages.com, villages with an S, Veritas, Veritas, depending on whether you're saying it in Spanish. But yeah, veritasvillages.com. We have a contact us.
And we'll put it in the show notes too.
Perfect. Yeah. And yeah, we have a very responsive group of people that are property experts. And one of the big things is deciding which country do you want to live in. And is it, El Salvador? Is it Nicaragua? Is it Panama? Is it Costa Rica? Is it one of the other ones? And it may not be in one of our communities. But like I said, we have the expat guide. It's kind of talks about Latin America from our perspective and from the Latin perspective. So yeah, I'd encourage you to check it out, and if you decide not to, great. But I'm sure a lot of people will find it a great place to be.
But they can come tour the.
Yeah, you can. Like I said, we have their Veritas RPM. We could connect you with them and stay in a beachfront home or stay beside a river in one of the highland communities, and absolutely.
Yeah.
We're on Airbnb and different things like that too. So
no, because I think a lot of times, people, that's what I always tell people, don't just buy something sight unseen.
Yeah.
Go sit, spend some time there, see if it fits. Because sometimes people, even in El Salvador, they think they want to be at the beach, and then they realize it's hot at the beach.
Yeah.
And
we've, as you've seen with our communities, a lot of them are up a little bit higher elevation, and that's because, well, it's hard to grow stuff on the beach too, right? The salt spray and the heat, and it can be a little warm for people that aren't used to the heat. You get acclimatized after a while, but so living up, it's nice to go to the beach, but it's also sometimes nice to live a few miles back in the hills where it's quite a bit cooler, 5 to 10 degrees cooler, and it makes all the world a difference for people. I like to say, I like climates that it's warm enough that your pool stays warm enough to use, but it's cool enough that you don't have to constantly be sitting in air conditioning and you can enjoy the outdoors, right? It's such a beautiful areas out here. So that's kind of what we look for, and that helps a lot with the sustainability part too, because almost anything grows, from bananas to whatever to corn, right? It all grows in that climate. So that's what we look for when we're looking for property.
Perfect. Are you on Twitter, X?
Yeah, we have at Autris Group is the company's X, and at Veritas Villages on as well for the communities. Mine's at Patrick Hiebert, and so I can, if you only get one right and it's mine, I'll help you connect to the other ones. But yeah, so it's And on most of the social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever, all the different places.
Perfect.
But yeah, usually it's most of the people that come to live in our communities contact us through the website and then just get to talking to Andrea or Sarita or the people that are the property experts, and have Zoom calls with them, and then come down and see the places and fall in love with them. I can't think of one or two in the last year where people have actually come to see one of the communities and not decided to own there. So,
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
it's kind of like it sells itself
Yeah.
if you can just get them there.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense. Sweet. Well, I appreciate your time here, Patrick, and hopefully we'll be doing another one of these shortly, announcing a project here in El Salvador.
yeah, I believe that's coming. So
All right.
I look forward to that. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. It's always great to be with you, and it was fun hanging out with you for the day and being on the show. It's great.